Hey, what's up, guys? This is Marseille, aka the Property Pastor, coming at you one more time with a insightful and valuable video. Today, I wanted to go over with you 10 books that I believe are essential, very valuable for new real estate investors, and I wanted to kind of give you my top 10 books. Basically, my top 10, things that I think will be very valuable and insightful for you during your journey. So, I want to kind of run through those and give you some good food for thought. A lot of video content is out there, a lot of websites are out there, a lot of trainings are out there, but I personally love books. I love to read. I think you gain a lot of insight by being able to study, by being able to read over and over, things of that nature. So I want to really jump in, dig in, and give you some good books. Just 10, 15 bucks on Amazon will get you each of these books, allow you to add to your library and add to your toolbox. But look, before we get started, I want to remind you guys to like and subscribe to our page. Simply click that button in the lower right hand corner. That's going to plug you into our page and valuable insight as we publish great content for investors like yourself. So let's dig in. Book number one I think is very insightful, very informative, that helped me tremendously in my journey, was the book on real estate investing by Brandon Turner. That's right, Mr. Bigger Pockets. He hosts the Bigger Pockets podcast. He's very instrumental in that platform, and has helped a lot of investors, myself included. But his book on real estate investing is a phenomenal overview book. It really walks you through, the different mechanisms, from the closing process to off-market deals, to looking at things up on MLS, working with real estate agents, building your team through attorneys, through CPAs, through contractors. It's just a good one-stop shop to give you a fantastic overview. So I really wanted to list that book as the number one resource for new investors. So I would definitely encourage you to pick that book up. Take your time, read it a couple of times. I think, don't be in a rush. Like I've said before in other videos, before I got started in real estate investing, I actually took about 6 months just to educate myself, and it was just digging into books, watching videos, listening to podcasts, attending local meetup meetings on our local, we call it PRIA around here in Hampton, but it's a real estate investor association, and then joining the mastermind groups and things of that nature. But education is key. So like I said, that very first book that I would recommend you dig into is the book on real estate investing by Mr. Brandon Turner. The second book, which is really not necessarily just for real estate investors, but it is a phenomenal, finance book, a mindset book, and I think as you get into any form of investing, real estate included, you really need to get your mind right. You need to kind of shift your mindset, because we've kind of, been conditioned to go to college and get a good job, get a degree, work a very long time, and retire just in time to enjoy maybe 5 years or so, maybe 10, whatever the case might be. But Rich Dad Poor Dad is a phenomenal book by Robert Kiyosaki. He kind of just goes through his own experiences, and he kind of tells a kind of a parable, so to speak, about his actual dad, who kind of told him the myth and kept him into what they call the rat race. And then it also contrasts that with his rich dad, who was an entrepreneur, who owned tons of real estate, who invested money, things of that nature, and really put his money to work for him. So the book is phenomenal. I think it's a good read. It's an eye-opening read. I read it years ago, before I started in the real estate investing, but I read it on occasion, kind of go back through it, through audiobooks and things like that. But I think it's a great book just to kind of shift your mindset. So that's my number two on the list, and I think it'll be very valuable to you. The next book I think is also really good for investors, is the book on no and low money down investing, also by Mr. Brandon Turner. He's got a lot of books he's written, which I think are phenomenal. I think he did that whole journey of just hunting through tons of material, and he's kind of consolidated a lot of information from his experiences. But this book on no and low money down, it kind of walks through the different financing mechanisms that you have at your disposal. One of the barriers to getting into real estate investment is definitely the capital side. Coming up with a 20% down payment to be able to buy your first property can be a little daunting. But Brandon does a great job at just going through the different mechanisms, from your traditional bank lending to hard money lenders. He also talks about, seller financing, owner financing, also known as, which is a great mechanism to get into a property for very little money down, and kind of leverage some different skills, create your own terms, so to speak, and things of that nature. So he really does a really good job of just digging into the different ways that you can finance a deal, from a research perspective, from a preparation perspective. Also goes through a little bit of the underwriting process, things you need to get in place to have your financial house in order if you do go the traditional route. But I think it's a great book just to kind of give you kind of a flair for some of the different options that you have out here to finance your deal. So I think that's definitely a book that you want to pick up. Number 4 on my list is a book by Tony Robbins. That's right, Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker, the motivational guru. He's written a book called Money Master the Game, and I think it's a great book. It's another one of those mindset books that just kind of goes through having a financial blueprint and a strategy. And he goes through and he debunks some of the myths about really relying on a 401k. He goes through, how those things are set up. He goes through and talks about how do you set up a strategy to be able to invest money over time, live off of compound interest, basically get enough principal built up so that you can live off of interest and allow your wealth to continue to grow and compound over time. So it's a phenomenal book. He goes through, and I've read it once. I think I'm going to start my second time going through the book, but it's just a great read. He kind of debunks some of the myths about going through your traditional financial planner. Tells you about how many financial planners are paid off of commissions and really paid to encourage you to trade, and not necessarily just to put your money into what they call index funds and allow the stock market to work for you and use things like dollar cost averaging and things of that nature, which are phenomenal tools to allow money to continue to grow no matter what the market is doing. So I think that's a great read for you, a great book to dig into because it's another mindset shift book that I think you need as an investor in anything, but especially as a real estate investor. One of the things that we really try to focus on, that I try to focus on, is creating multiple streams of income, not being reliant on any one thing. So I think Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins is a fantastic book, and he actually introduces. One thing I like about the book is that it introduces you to other very strong financial people like Ray Dalio, who've got other books that they've written to kind of just expand and grow your skill set. So it's kind of one of those books that kind of opens up a door to a lot of other things. So I would definitely recommend you pick that one up and dig into it. Number 5 on the list is Mr. Grant Cardone. Some of you have heard of Grant Cardone. He's a high energy guy, but he is a phenomenal, aggressive thinker. He's great at real estate. He's great at sales. He really challenges you to just grind. And I think one thing about Grant's book is called the 10x rule, and what it does is just basically says whatever your goal is, you need to multiply by 10x. So if you want to buy one house next year, you need to 10x it and buy 10. And the thing about it is, the reality is that Grant realizes, and we realize, I realize that, you're not going to achieve all of that. But, if you went for one, maybe you're underselling what your true capability is. And he just talks about grinding. He talks about, eliminating excuses, eliminating distractions, getting to the place where, hey, Friday night, I know you've been working all week and you're tired, but you need to get on your grind. You need to work on your business because, really you can play now and pay later, or you can do the opposite. So I think really get to that place of investing in yourself, using your time wisely, using it and really just grinding and figuring out how do I get to where I need to go 10 times where I want to be. So I think it's something that's really helped me in my business, year one to now going into, finishing up, really our second year. Our second full year, we've seen some really good growth, and I'm really excited about what next year is going to bring. But I think some of the principles I picked up in Grant's book have really helped me to level up in my business. Next book I want to talk a little bit about is on number 6 on my list is Buy, Rehab, Rent, Refinance, and Repeat by Mr. David Greene. He's also part of the Bigger Pockets family. David Greene has written a phenomenal book which is just talks about this whole process of taking a property, buying it low, doing some rehab work to it, increasing the value of it, renting it out, and then refinancing. After doing that, recover. Basically, what he's teaching you how to do is how to recover initial capital and recycle it, which is a pretty cool way of thinking about things. Because the wonderful part about the refinance process in real estate is that you don't pay any taxes on refinance. Now, if you go and you flip a house, which I'm not personally a flipper, because it just doesn't appeal to me. It's not something that I really enjoy doing. I love the rehab portion of it, and I'll probably flip some houses in the future. But it's one of those things for me that I want to keep it all in house. I want to keep that asset because I think getting that paycheck, basically instead of flipping the house to someone else, this method teaches you how to flip the house back to yourself, right? So you get to hold onto the asset, you get the capital back tax free, and reuse it. So I think his book is a fantastic book to read, just to kind of shift your mindset and your thinking. So it really helps you on the tax side. So I think it's a great book for you to check out, by David Greene. Next book was another level up book for me. At some point, you're going to run into challenges with money. You're going to run into challenges with banks not really wanting to lend money, and banks are they're great, but they're also a big headache. They want so much stuff from you, and I want to. This next book is called Raising Private Capital, by Matt Fairclough, and he's written a phenomenal book about how to actually raise private capital, and it's another one of those mindset opening books. That really just opens you up to a whole new realm of finance, to do deals. And his book just walks you through, how to put together a proposal for private investors. Many people who own their homes free and clear, they've just got equity sitting out there that they could reuse and become a bank themselves. I've done a previous video entitled, Is Your Money Working for You, or Are You Working for Your Money? So there's a lot of people out there who have equity, who have capital, don't know what to do with it. They're afraid of the stock market and things like that. And in can come real estate investors who are reliable, who can produce lucrative returns on a reliable investment like real estate, and create win-wins for people. So Matt's book really goes through that from the standpoint of guiding people through the process, through even from the standpoint of doing what they call syndications, which are much larger deals if you're going into like apartment complexes and things like that. I have done some private money with a few investors in my time as a result of reading Matt's book, been able to set up self-directed IRAs for people and guide them through that process. So that book was really good because as time goes, you want to be able to leverage your skills, you want to be able to leverage your experiences to attract private money. And the wonderful thing about it is private money is a whole new realm of funds and finances to be able to do more deals. But people have to have that confidence in you. And I think Matt's book really is helpful as you start to grow that business and kind of transition out of the beginner phases of real estate. Next book is investing. Number 8 is Investing in Duplexes, Triplexes, and Quads. And that's written by Mr. Larry Loftus. A lot of people like single family. I personally love multifamily because it just gives me more stability against vacancy. So it's a couple ways to look at it. And some people like single family because they tend to get a tenant who's a little bit more established in life. They may stay there for multiple years, but the cash flow tends to be a bit lower. But then on the other hand, doing duplexes, triplexes, and quads, which I own several multifamily units. Multifamily units for me, they give me much higher cash flow, which I like. They also give me hedges against what I call vacancies. So in other words, a property is going to be full. It's going to pay for itself typically after the second or third tenant is there, and anyone above and beyond that is generating additional revenue. But with a single family house, when a person's gone, they're gone until you find another tenant. So, and then the other benefit that I do like about multifamily investing is just from the standpoint of the number of deals. So a lot of times real estate investors measure their investments by the number of doors, not by the number of physical properties. But one thing that the book talks about is the number of transactions you need to do. So if you got a quad unit, which is basically 4 different apartments combined under one roof, those are 4 doors. But if you buy 4 houses, those are 4 different transactions. So that's 4 times inspections, 4 times appraisals, 4 times closing costs, all of that headache that goes through. There's 4 times that, right? So it just kind of goes to the pros and cons to the different investing methods. So for me, I really enjoyed that book because it just kind of opened my eyes up to a really good start into investing. So my first couple of years, I really focused in multifamily and acquired those types of properties because for me, they were stable, they were great from the cash flow perspective, and things of that nature. So I think his book is a really good starter for a lot of people because it just gives you a different perspective. The next book is a little bit of more of an academic book. It's more of for those of y'all who are more into the accounting side, the finance side, the math side. There's a great book called What Every Real Estate Investor Needs to Know About Cash Flow and 36 other financial calculations. So pretty long title, but it's by a gentleman named Frank Kellen. I believe I pronounced his name right, but his book is phenomenal because it walks through 36 financial calculations that you really need to master, know, and understand in order to evaluate deals, to compare one investment to another, to gauge performance of your investment and things like that. But it really walks through things like cash flow, cash on cash return, which is basically saying, how much you put in versus the return on that particular investment. Things like net operating income, all the different analysis tools that you would need, like debt service coverage ratio, things that your bank's going to look at, things like margin. It's a host of calculations from the residential and the commercial world that I think are very valuable to every investor. So I definitely recommend you pick that one up. So that's number 9 on the list. Last book, I've actually done an individual review on this book, but I think it's imperative. And that book is called Landlording on Autopilot by Mr. Mike Butler. I think it's a phenomenal book for every investor who's going to own rental property because it just talks about systems. Systems are very important because they allow you to operate a business efficiently and effectively, and they help avoid waste, they help avoid properties being mismanaged and misrun. So Mike does a really good job. I really like Mike's book because he goes through it, and he actually invested on the side for over 10 years. I believe it's probably like 15 years or so. He ran a successful real estate business actually as his own property manager, and had a full-time job. So his side hustle was real estate, and he grew to dozens upon dozens of houses, and he was able to manage those effectively while maintaining a full-time job. Now, I personally have a property manager, but even in having a property manager, you have to be able to manage your property manager, if that makes sense. You can't just say, yep, they're taking care of it all, because you're one of a large portfolio, and if you don't know the right questions to ask, you're not able to ask about their systems, your property could be mismanaged. So I think this is a phenomenal book to invest in, to look at, and just to kind of glean as much knowledge as you can before you jump into that first deal. So, hey, that's my top 10. Wanted to give you some books. You may be saying, man, I hate to read, but listen, the thing about it is, in real estate investing, you've got to overcome some of the things that hold you back, and knowledge is really key in this business. So the more you got to keep learning, you got to keep growing every single day. And they say fools rush in, but at the same time, you can't spend so much time that you've been reading books for 5 years and haven't done your first deal yet. So I recommend, preparing yourself, arming yourself, I like to say. So arm yourself with information, but make sure that information that you're arming yourself in drives towards some actual tangible action. So I think these books will be a big help for you. Hey, if you got some other ones that have been beneficial to you in your own real estate career, feel free to drop them down in the comments. I'm sure everyone would love to see them. But if you got any specific questions on the books, we will be posting some different screenshots and things of that nature, so you'll know how to get a hold of them. But hey, I look forward to hearing from you guys more, talking to you more in the days and weeks to come. Wish you nothing but the best in your journey. God bless you guys. Until the next time, this is Marseille, aka the Property Pastor, signing off. Don't forget to like and subscribe. God bless.